The beeping of hospital monitors had become my constant companion for 2 weeks straight. I stood frozen outside my son's room, the security guard's hand on my shoulder. "Ma'am, I need you to leave. The family has requested limited visitation." Family? I was his mother, but according to my in-laws who stood triumphantly inside, watching through the glass partition, I had lost that right when the divorce papers were signed. What they didn't know was what I'd found in my ex-husband's abandoned storage unit last month, evidence that would shatter their perfect family facade and change everything about who had rights to make decisions for my comatose 17-year-old son. "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone and opening the email from my lawyer, "I think you'll find I'm the only one with legal authority to be here." The look on my mother-in-law's face when security escorted her out instead of me is something I'll never forget. The moment I reclaimed not just my place at my son's bedside, but the truth about our family. I married into the prestigious Harding family of Westchester County when I was 23, young, naive, and completely unprepared for what that would mean. The Hardings weren't just wealthy, they were Connecticut blue blood wealthy, with a family tree that included senators and CEOs. My ex-husband James was the golden child, Harvard law graduate following in his father's footsteps at their generations-old firm. I was the scholarship girl from Scranton who'd worked her way through state college. A rough diamond, his mother Eleanor called me at our engagement party with that tight smile that never reached her eyes. James always had a charitable heart. The Hardings controlled everything. Our wedding, 600 guests, most I'd never met. Our home, a colonial in their approved neighborhood. Even when we should start a family. When Ethan was born, Eleanor insisted on being in the delivery room, critiquing my breathing techniques between contractions. She was the first to hold him, while I was still being stitched up. "He's a true Harding," she announced to the room. "Look at that chin. That's the Harding chin." When Ethan was 7, we attended the annual Harding Thanksgiving, 23 relatives in their Hamptons estate. During dinner, I accidentally used the fish fork for my salad. Eleanor stopped the entire conversation to correct me, explaining proper silverware etiquette to everyone at the table, for Sarah's benefit. Ethan watched, confused why Grandma was making Mommy's cheeks turn red. That night, he brought me his teddy bear, because Teddy makes me feel better when I'm sad. By the time Ethan was 12, James was staying later at the office, missing baseball games and school concerts. I found lipstick on his collar, so cliché it was almost funny. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. "Rebecca understands the pressures of my position," he said. "She doesn't embarrass me at client dinners." The divorce was brutal. The Hardings closed ranks around James, character witnesses testifying about my instability and unsuitable parenting. They brought up my father's alcoholism, my mother's cleaning jobs. The judge, a golfing buddy of James's father, awarded James primary custody, with me getting alternate weekends and Wednesday dinners. Despite everything, I made those moments count. While the Hardings had Ethan attending cotillions and legacy events, our Wednesdays were for midnight milkshakes at the 24-hour diner and impromptu road trips to see his favorite bands. "Mom, these are the only days I feel like me," he told me once, as we sat on the hood of my car watching a meteor shower. Through it all, I kept saving, skipping vacations, taking extra shifts as a nurse, living in a one-bedroom apartment, to give Ethan the thing I promised when he turned 18, full tuition to any college he wanted, away from the Harding influence. I'd kept it in a special account, growing steadily for a decade. My grand gesture, my promise that he could escape. 3 months ago, I received notice that the storage facility where James kept overflow items was being cleared out for non-payment. Apparently, the family's financial situation had changed. Going through the unit before it was auctioned, I found a locked file box. Inside were documents that made my blood run cold and changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage, the Hardings, and who really had rights to my son. Ethan's 17th birthday was approaching, and despite our custody arrangement, the Hardings had planned an elaborate celebration at the Westchester Country Club without consulting me. I only found out when Ethan called, his voice tight with discomfort. "Mom, I don't want this big thing. Grandma's invited like 50 people I barely know." "Did you tell your dad? He says I need to start networking for college applications. There'll be Yale alumni there." I bit my tongue. This wasn't about Ethan. It was about parading him as the next generation of Harding success. Still, I swallowed my pride and texted James, asking if I could attend. 3 days later, I received a formal invitation in the mail, not as Ethan's mother, but as Miss Sarah Mitchell and guest, like I was a distant acquaintance. When I arrived at the country club, Eleanor intercepted me at the entrance, eyeing my department store dress with a practiced sweep. "Sarah, so glad you could make it. We've seated you with the Petersons. They're new members and won't know about everything." Translation: I was being quarantined with people who wouldn't know I was Ethan's mother. The ballroom was decorated in Harding style, tasteful, expensive, impersonal. Ethan sat at the head table between James and his new wife Rebecca, looking uncomfortable in a tailored suit. His smile when he spotted me was the only genuine thing in the room. During dinner, James's father Richard stood to make a toast. "To my grandson Ethan, who exemplifies the Harding tradition of excellence. Your early acceptance to Phillips Exeter Academy's summer program continues our family's 50-year legacy." My fork clattered against my plate. This was the first I'd heard about any boarding school program. Ethan's eyes found mine across the room, pleading silently. When it was time for gifts, Eleanor announced grandly that the family was presenting Ethan with his future, a guaranteed summer internship at the firm, followed by a place at Dartmouth where 4 generations of Hardings had attended. "We've already made the alumni contribution," she added with a meaningful look at the table of Dartmouth representatives. My fork clattered against my plate. This was the first I'd heard about any boarding school program. Ethan's eyes found mine across the room, pleading silently. When it was time for gifts, Eleanor materialized beside us. "Ethan, the Winslows want a photo with you." "In a minute, Grandma." "Now, Ethan, Sarah understands you have responsibilities tonight." Her hand clamped on his shoulder, steering him away. I was heading to the bar when I overheard James and his father in a heated conversation around the corner. "The audit is happening next week, James. If they find those transfers, they won't. Everything's buried in offshore accounts." "What about the Miller case settlement? If the Bar Association?" "Dad, I've handled it. The client funds are back where they belong. No one will know." I froze, my mind racing to the documents I'd found in the storage unit. Irregular financial statements, letters from the state bar about client trust accounts, and a half-drafted confession in James's handwriting. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Is this Ethan Mitchell's mother? This is Travis. There's been an accident at the lake house party. Ethan's hurt bad. Ambulance taking him to Memorial." The world tilted. Lake house? Ethan was supposed to be staying at the country club hotel with his grandparents after the party. I ran back into the ballroom. "James, Ethan's been in an accident." The room fell silent. Eleanor stepped forward, face taut. "What nonsense is this? Ethan's right." She turned, but the seat where Ethan had been was empty. James paled. He said he was going to the bathroom. The drive to Memorial Hospital was the longest 20 minutes of my life. By the time I arrived, Ethan was already in surgery. Broken ribs, punctured lung, head trauma. The nurse at the desk looked up from her computer. "Are you family? I'm his mother. I'll need to see ID. We already have family in the waiting room." The Hardings had somehow beaten me there. Eleanor stood when she saw me, her face a mask of fury. "This is your fault. Those Wednesday nights, filling his head with rebellion. He snuck out to that party because of you." "My fault? You were supposed to be watching him." "You have no right to question us," Richard cut in. "We're his legal guardians when he's with us." James stepped between us. "Sarah, maybe it's best if you go. We'll call with updates." "I'm not going anywhere." "He's my son." Eleanor's voice dropped to a cold whisper. "Not according to the custody agreement when you're creating a scene. Security!" A security guard approached as James showed him papers on his phone, our custody agreement with some clause highlighted. "Ma'am," the guard said, "the family has requested you leave. Hospital policy respects legal guardianship." As they escorted me out, Eleanor's triumphant smile burned into my memory. But she didn't know what I had in my car, the documents from the storage unit, and my own bombshell waiting to be deployed. For 3 days, I was forced to get updates on my son's condition through texts from James, each one briefer than the last. Ethan had been moved from intensive care to a private room, but remained unconscious. The Hardings had established a rotation, ensuring someone was always there, not just for Ethan, but to keep me out. On the 4th day, I'd had enough. I contacted Andrea Reyes, the lawyer who'd been helping me make sense of what I'd found in that storage unit. "The hospital can't legally keep you from your son," Andrea explained, "especially not with what we now know." We arrived at Memorial Hospital together, a manila envelope tucked under my arm. The security guard recognized me immediately. "Miss Mitchell, I've been instructed." Andrea stepped forward. "This is Sarah Mitchell, legal guardian of Ethan Mitchell, and she has every right to see her son, unless you want a lawsuit for obstructing parental rights." He hesitated, then called his supervisor. After several tense minutes, we were allowed up, but he followed us to the room. When I pushed open the door, I found Eleanor arranging flowers while James sat beside the bed. Ethan lay still, his face bruised, a breathing tube still helping him. My heart cracked seeing him so vulnerable. Eleanor straightened immediately. "You have no right to be here." "James, call security. They're the ones who escorted us up," Andrea replied coolly, handing James her business card. "I'm Andrea Reyes, Miss Mitchell's attorney." James's face drained of color at the word attorney. "Whatever stunt you're pulling, Sarah, it won't work," he said, but I caught the nervous glance he shot toward his mother. No stunt, just the truth. I moved to Ethan's bedside, touching his hand gently. "I'm here, baby. Mom's here." Eleanor stepped between us. "James, remove her before I call the police." "The police would be very interested in what's in this envelope," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, "especially after I file for emergency full custody today." Richard Harding chose that moment to enter, coffee cups in hand. He stopped short at the sight of me. "What's she doing here? I thought we handled this." "They're about to handle a lawsuit if they try to keep me from my son again," I replied, "but that's just the beginning." I opened the envelope, removing the first document. This is a forensic accounting report showing systematic embezzlement from client trust accounts at Harding & Associates over the past 8 years. The room went deadly silent. "That's absurd," Richard finally sputtered. "James, get her out of here." I continued, pulling out more papers. bank transfers to offshore accounts, falsified settlement statements, and the draft confession I found in James's storage unit. The State Bar Association and the FBI will be very interested. James lunged for the papers, but Andrea blocked him. Touch her or these documents, and I add assault to the charges, she warned. You can't prove anything, Eleanor hissed. I already have, I replied, pulling out my phone. The forensic accountant has copies. One call, and they go to the authorities. Richard's face had turned ashen. What do you want? Full legal and physical custody of Ethan. Complete removal of all Harding visitation rights until he's 18 and can decide for himself. And the college fund you've been managing for him transferred to my control immediately. You're blackmailing us, James accused. I'm protecting my son from criminals who would use him as a prop for their family legacy while stealing from their clients. Eleanor stepped forward, her voice venomous. You've always been jealous of us, of what we could give Ethan. You think a nurse's salary can compare to what we offer? You're nothing but white trash who got lucky with my son. Something in me snapped. 10 years of swallowed insults, of being made to feel less than, of watching them try to mold my son into their image. What you offer lies, pretense. You've been stealing to maintain your lifestyle while looking down on me for actually working honestly for a living. I stepped closer. You never loved Ethan. You loved the idea of him. Another Harding male to carry on your precious legacy. You never asked what he wanted. How dare you? Eleanor began, but a weak voice from the bed silenced her. Mom? We all turned. Ethan's eyes were open, focused hazily on me. I rushed to him, tears streaming down my face. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. They wouldn't let you in, he mumbled, his voice raspy from the tube they'd removed yesterday. I asked for you. Eleanor pushed forward. Ethan, darling, you need to rest. Your mother is just leaving. No, his voice was weak but determined. I want my mom. James stepped forward. Son, you don't understand what's happening. I understand enough, Ethan whispered. I heard you, before the party, talking to Grandpa about moving money. Is that why you're always telling me I have to be a lawyer to fix your messes? The room went still. Eleanor looked like she'd been slapped. Richard's jaw clenched so tight I could see a muscle jumping in his cheek. You have 30 seconds to leave this room, I said to the Hardings, my voice steady despite my pounding heart, or the documents go to the FBI today. James looked at his parents, then back at me. This isn't over. For your sake, it better be, Andrea replied. The statute of limitations on financial fraud is quite generous. One by one, they filed out, Eleanor last, her eyes burning with hatred. As the door closed behind them, I collapsed into the chair beside Ethan's bed, clutching his hand like a lifeline. I heard everything, Mom, he whispered. I'm sorry I snuck out to that party. Shh, that doesn't matter now. All that matters is you getting better. The security guard, who had witnessed everything, cleared his throat. Ma'am, should I update the approved visitors list? I looked at my son, then back at the guard. Yes, from now on, I decide whose family. The aftermath was both simpler and more complicated than I'd imagined. Within 24 hours, James's attorney had delivered signed custody papers, giving me full legal and physical custody of Ethan. The college fund, nearly depleted as it turned out, was transferred to my control with an additional settlement that coincidentally matched the original amount plus interest. The Hardings disappeared from our lives with stunning speed. James resigned from the family firm and took a position with a corporate legal department in Chicago. Eleanor and Richard canceled their country club membership and retreated to their winter home in Boca Raton. The rumors around Westchester spread like wildfire: financial troubles, pending investigations, but nothing definitive emerged publicly. Andrea explained why. "They're buying your silence with that settlement. Smart move on their part." "I never actually said I'd stay quiet," I pointed out. She smiled. "No, but they're betting a nurse raising a son alone needs the money more than the satisfaction of justice. Are they wrong?" They weren't. The settlement meant Ethan could still attend any college he wanted. It meant I could finally quit my night shifts. It meant security in a way I'd never had before. Justice would have felt good, but it wouldn't have paid tuition. Ethan's recovery was slow. 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a moderate concussion kept him hospitalized for 2 more weeks. I took leave from work and practically lived in his room, sleeping in the reclining chair beside his bed. We had long conversations during those nights, honest ones, without the Harding filter. "I never wanted to be a lawyer," he confessed one evening. "Every time I tried to tell Dad, he'd talk over me about family legacy and my future. What do you want?" "Marine biology. I want to study the ocean." His face lit up as he talked about coral reef conservation and research vessels. It was the most animated I'd seen him in years. "Then that's what you'll do," I promised. A week after Ethan came home, Travis, the boy who had texted me about the accident, came to visit. He was lanky and nervous, clutching his baseball cap in his hands as he sat on the edge of our couch. "I should have stopped him from driving," he blurted out. "We were both drinking, but I thought he was okay to drive." "Why did you text me?" I asked. "Not his dad or grandparents." Travis looked down. "Ethan always talked about you, how you were the only one who really saw him, you know? He has your number listed as his emergency contact in his phone." I didn't know that. The custody agreement specified James should be called first in emergencies. The thought of Ethan quietly ensuring I would know if he was hurt made my throat tight. Another surprise visitor arrived a few days later. Rebecca, James's wife, looking uncomfortable on my doorstep. "I left him," she said without preamble. "After what happened at the hospital, the things I learned." She handed me a USB drive, financial records, emails, things you might need if they ever try to come back into Ethan's life. "Why are you doing this?" Her perfectly made-up face crumpled slightly. "I'm pregnant, and I saw how they tried to control Ethan, mold him. I won't let them do that to my child." As Rebecca left, I realized something profound was happening. The Harding facade was cracking from within. Ethan's school arranged for him to complete his junior year coursework from home. By summer, he was well enough to start looking at colleges. We took a road trip to California, touring marine biology programs. Standing on the pier at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, watching Ethan's face as he talked with a graduate student about their research vessel, I knew we had made the right choice. "Mom," he said that night as we sat on our hotel balcony overlooking the Pacific, "I need to tell you something." My heart stuttered. "What is it?" I knew about the lake house party for weeks. I didn't sneak out on impulse. He looked away. "I heard Grandpa and Dad talking about some audit, how they might have to leave the country for a while. They mentioned taking me with them." My blood ran cold. "They were planning to flee with you?" He nodded. "That's why I left the party. I was coming to find you, to warn you. I was scared and driving too fast and—" His voice broke. I held him as he cried, this child man who had carried so much on his shoulders. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better," I whispered. "You did protect me. You always have." He pulled back, wiping his eyes. "Remember that compass you gave me for my birthday? The nurses saved it from my clothes. It was smashed in the accident, but I kept it." He pressed something into my hand, the broken compass, its glass cracked, the needle bent. "I don't need it anymore," he said. "I already know where I'm going." That fall, I sold my apartment and bought a small house closer to the hospital where I worked. The second bedroom became Ethan's whenever he was home from school. I started dating again, nothing serious, just coffee with a pediatric surgeon who made me laugh for the first time in years. I joined a support group for single parents and found friends who understood the journey. As for the grand gesture, that college fund I'd saved for 10 years, Ethan insisted I use part of it for myself. "You've put your life on hold for me long enough," he argued. "Take a trip, go back to school, do something just for you." So I did. I enrolled in a nurse practitioner program specializing in adolescent care. On my first day of classes, I found a small package in my bag, a new compass, gleaming and perfect, with a note in Ethan's handwriting. "Now it's your turn to find your way. Love, E." The final surprise came 6 months after the hospital confrontation. A thick envelope arrived from the Westchester District Attorney's Office. Inside was a formal letter informing me that James and Richard Harding had entered guilty pleas to multiple counts of wire fraud and embezzlement. The plea deal included full restitution to clients, but no jail time, typical for white-collar first offenders with good lawyers. The last page was a handwritten note on Harding and Associates letterhead. "Sarah, you won. I hope it was worth it. Ethan deserves better than all of us. J." I stared at those words for a long time before placing the letter in my desk drawer. There was no satisfaction in their downfall, only relief that the shadow they cast over our lives had finally lifted. That night, I called Ethan at college. "How's the marine biology prodigy?" I asked when he answered. "Covered in salt water and loving every minute," he laughed. "How's the nurse practitioner student?" "Learning to see patients in a whole new way," I replied. "I got a letter today. Your father and grandfather took a plea deal." A long silence followed. "Are you okay?" he finally asked. "I'm more than okay," I realized, speaking the truth as it crystallized. For the first time, I feel like we're both exactly where we're supposed to be. 2 years have passed since that night in the hospital room. Ethan is thriving in his second year at UC San Diego, already accepted into a research program for the summer. I'm finishing my nurse practitioner certification and considering a position at a youth clinic. The Hardings remain in our past, though Eleanor sends the occasional birthday card to Ethan, attempts at reconciliation that arrive without return addresses. He keeps them in a box, unopened. "Some bridges stay burned," he told me once, and that's okay. Last week, I visited him in California. We went scuba diving together, something I'd always been too afraid to try before. Hovering weightless above a kelp forest, watching my son point excitedly at sea creatures I couldn't name, I felt a profound sense of peace. We'd both found our element. Family isn't always who shares your DNA. Sometimes it's who fights for you when everyone else has given up. Sometimes it's who sees the real you, not the person others want you to be. And sometimes family is something you have to redefine completely before you can truly find your place in the world. If my story resonates with you, hit the subscribe button and share your experiences in the comments below. Remember, you always have the power to decide who's truly family and who's just sharing your last name.